Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. Please visit our website, cscatlanta.org, for a complete list of live and recorded events. We invite you to sign up for our newsletter to stay connected to all future programs.
My name is Blair Avendano, and I oversee the nutrition program in the Northside Hospital Cancer Institute. And I oversee 21 oncology dietitians who cover 63 clinics within the state of Georgia. If you're new to my talks, we're just so glad you're here, and I welcome you to this session entitled Power Up with Protein. So prior to diving into the protein piece, I'm going to just give you a small intro to nutrition, the big umbrella of nutrition that has two main parts, and one is macronutrients and one is micronutrients. So macronutrients are the nutritive components of food that the body needs for energy and to maintain the body's structure and systems. We have three macronutrients that we get from food, and they are carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Carbohydrates are the primary energy source for the brain, muscles, and body. They are converted into glucose, which is either used immediately or our body stores it as glycogen in the liver and in our muscles. So, one of the purposes of carbohydrates is to preserve muscle mass by preventing protein from being used as energy, which is very important in treatment. And then fat's responsibility is to support our cell structure. It's involved in hormone production, brain health. It also helps to absorb fat-soluble vitamins, which we'll go over a little bit later. There is a caloric difference. So if you eat a gram of protein or carbohydrates, it's only going to have 4 calories per gram. But if you eat a gram of fat, it's going to have about 9 grams. So switching over here briefly to micronutrients, they are essential nutrients that the body needs only in small amounts to function properly. So unlike macronutrients, they're not going to provide energy, but they are needed for growth, disease prevention, and general well-being. There's vitamins and minerals are the two types, and vitamins are either fat soluble or water soluble. If you've heard of vitamin A, D, E, or K, those are going to be your fat soluble vitamins that you can potentially get too much of if you eat too much. And water soluble vitamins are vitamin C and the B vitamins. Minerals, the major minerals are going to be calcium, potassium, and magnesium, to name a few, and then trace are iron, zinc, and iodine. All right, so let's go ahead and get over to why we're here is to talk about protein. Protein is essential for many life-sustaining functions in the body. They're the building blocks of cells and tissues. We need protein for growth. It's also required for wound healing and maintaining healthy skin, hair, and organs. For maintaining muscle mass, it supports the maintenance and development of lean muscle mass, especially during aging or if we're recovering from an illness or physical training, we're going to need more protein. It oxygenates our red blood cells. So hemoglobin is the protein in red blood cells, and that's just responsible for carrying oxygen throughout the body. Without adequate protein or iron, oxygen transport can be compromised. It also regulates hormones like insulin and growth hormone, which are proteins or what we call peptide based. Protein intake supports hormonal balance and also metabolic processes. And then lastly, the last thing we're going to go over, last function, is aiding in digestion. So digestive enzymes like amylase and protease are proteins that help to break down our food so that our bodies can use them as nutrients. So you'll see over on the right side of the screen where protein is on a nutrition facts label. It's that part that's boxed in red. And I get asked all the time, how much protein do I need? And it's going to depend on a variety of factors, which I'll go over in a couple slides. But the recommended range can vary widely from approximately 10% of your calories per day, all the way up to like 35% of your calories per day. So if your body requires 2,000 calories a day, that would equate to 50 grams of protein on the 10% side of the range, up to 175 on the 35% side of the range. So what are the benefits of protein? So first, a lot of you may have heard this before, particularly if you worked with somebody on my team. It supports our blood sugar balance. So it's going to slow the carbohydrate digestion and absorption. When it's consumed with carbohydrates, it delays what we call gastric emptying and slows down the absorption of glucose. And so it's going to prevent those blood sugar spikes after eating and crashes, which can in turn lead to fatigue. So it helps to keep our energy steady. It also promotes what we call satiety, which just means a feeling of fullness. So protein is the most satiating macronutrient in comparison with carbs or fat, so it's going to make you feel very full. And it helps prolong that feeling of fullness after meals, which can naturally reduce overall energy intake or calorie intake. And it can support weight management because you do feel fuller longer and don't feel that need to eat quite as much. So it is also particularly beneficial for appetite regulation and again, supporting those weight loss or weight maintenance goals. And then lastly, it regulates hunger hormones. And so it's going to impact two key hormones involved in hunger regulation, which is ghrelin is one, which is the hunger hormone. So protein suppresses the ghrelin levels, which again are going to help you to feel less hungry after eating. And then also peptide YY and GLP-1. I know GLP-1 is all over the news, all in social media right now. So that's going to signal satiety to the brain, fullness. And so that's another benefit of protein. So as I mentioned before, we're going to briefly touch on how much protein should I eat, but I am going to preface that with please meet with your dietitian who can take all factors into consideration and help you come up with a healthy range for you. So factors consider can be dependent on age. Sometimes patients that are a little bit older may require more protein. Body weight, if you weigh more, you probably require more protein, as well as taller people. Activity level, more active individuals are going to require more protein. And then health status, it's just going to depend on various factors. Patients with cancer or cancer treatment often require more protein than they did prior to having cancer or being on cancer treatment. Our patients with wounds definitely require a good bit more protein. Kidney disease for patients that are not on dialysis sometimes require a little bit less protein depending on the stage and what's going on. However, if a patient with kidney disease is on either peritoneal or hemodialysis, they're going to begin to require more than the average person. The average is around 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram body weight for adults, and that is just average. Again, it could be less, it could be more just based on what's going on. So if you've been to my talks before, you know we are all about some plants. We talk about eating more plants all the time due to the antioxidant content and fiber content. And so I did want to lead with some good, healthy plant-based protein sources. If you're not on mute, would you mind putting yourself on mute, please? So plant-based protein sources are anti-inflammatory in nature. And again, they have those phytonutrients. It says 3 to 4 servings per week. You can obviously do more. So a serving size, not a whole lot, adds up. It adds up real quick to get a good amount of protein in. So you'll see a serving size here is about a half of a cup cooked. So black beans has about 8 grams of protein, and you'll see if as you go down the list that soybeans has a little bit higher, tofu, tempeh, so your soy protein sources are going to be a little bit higher. But we'll do a meatless Monday and have a bowl of lentils, and that in and of itself, if you just eat 1 cup of lentils, it has 18 grams of protein. And so, it's easy to get your protein in that way. You just have to be conscious about it. Some things that are not listed on there as far as protein content is concerned is nuts and seeds. So almonds have about 6 grams per ounce, peanuts 7 grams, chia seeds 5 grams. Hemp seeds are going to have a little bit more at 10 grams. And quinoa is actually a complete protein, and that has 8 grams per cup cooked. So if you're a quinoa fan, you can also get some protein in that way. Another good lean source of protein is going to be your fish. It's anti-inflammatory. Eating mostly omega-3s like mackerel, tuna, salmon's going to be very healthy for you. Trying to get in 3 to 4 servings a week is a good goal to have. But even if you're not eating any now, just starting with 2 will be very helpful for you in regards to protein and inflammation and getting in those omega-3s as well. I have a serving size slide later on, but a serving size is about 3 to 4 ounces, and that's about the size of a deck of cards, and that's going to give you between 20 and 25 grams of protein for a piece of fish. So that's a great way to get in your protein and to have an anti-inflammatory source. Other protein sources, veggie burgers, they honestly get a little bit more credit than they deserve. A lot of them only have about 5 grams of protein, and it's good to watch for sodium. Some of them can be high in sodium content. And the fast food versions of the veggie burgers or impossible burgers can actually be very high in fat too. So I almost would just rather have the real thing with the sauce and everything. You might as well. Eggs and egg whites, that's a good source of protein, but eggs in and of themselves only have about 6 grams per egg. So if you have 2 eggs for breakfast, that's only about 12 grams. So adding some egg whites to your eggs is a good way to pump up your protein in your breakfast. Another good protein source is chicken or turkey breast. Only about the size of a deck of cards of chicken is 3 or 4 ounces, and that's going to have about 20 grams of protein. And then also whey protein isolate powder is a good source of protein. Good thing to add to smoothies and soups and things like that. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. So in regards to cancer and just general health, protein sources to eat less frequently. The two I want to highlight on this slide are going to be your red meat, so beef, pork, lamb, venison. You're going to want to limit to around 12 to 18 ounces per week. So it's not that you can't have them, it's just maybe having them less frequently than some of the leaner protein sources. So you want to look for the word round or loin in your protein sources because those are going to be a little bit leaner. And again, if you've been to my talks, that we want to, as much as possible, avoid processed meats. There is no safe level deemed for consuming processed meats. And that consists of things like bacon, sausage, even turkey sausage, hot dogs, bologna, all types of lunch meat, and things of that nature. So dairy and dairy alternatives. Dairy is a good source of protein. Particularly if you're trying to get your calcium up, you're going to want to be consuming dairy. You just have to really watch for full fat dairy foods because they are also high in saturated fats, so we do not recommend them. So we want to be choosing either the non-fat or the low-fat varieties. If you're lactose intolerant, you can choose from the calcium fortified plant-based or lactose intolerant friendly milks. I'll go over those in just a second. So the serving size is going to be 8 ounces or 1 cup of milk alternatives in yogurt or half a cup of cottage cheese or a 1 ounce block of cheese as well. So again, we want to do skim milk or 1% milk, yogurt, cottage cheese, 2% or low fat, soy milk, pea milk, and hemp milk. That's going to be about 7 or 8 grams of protein per 8 ounces. So if you want to do a plant-based milk, soy milk, pea, and hemp is going to be a good choice for you. Lactate is going to have the lactose removed, and so it's going to be easier to digest. And the 3 milks, the almond, oat, and rice with the double stars, are going to be real low in protein. And so I recommend those for patients who are wanting to get their calcium up, but not necessarily as a source of protein. So protein choices, we want to limit again, foods, as I mentioned, the dairy, anything that's high in saturated fat. And so the lower, like the 75 to the 85% fat ground beef, the sausages, hot dogs, and bacon are going to be high in saturated fat. Bologna, salami, pepperoni, some of those types of meats are going to be higher in saturated fat, as well as fatty cuts of beef, pork, and lamb. So we do want to limit your intake per week of 8 to 12 ounces. So just try to keep track of that as much as possible. I recommend either keeping a food diary and just kind of seeing how often you're consuming it now, and maybe try to incorporate some meatless Mondays or eat turkey or tuna, fish, chicken in place of red meat, because it does add up. And again, we want to avoid processed meats that help reduce our cancer risk. So beverages with protein, milk again, soy milk, whole milk, which we want to try to avoid whole milk, but cow's milk, plant-based milk. Also, there are some fruit juices that have some protein in it. Carnation instant breakfast. You can make a homemade smoothie. a milkshake, and then there's also oral nutrition supplements for particularly for patients that need more protein and calories, but there are some oral nutrition supplements um, that just have a lot of protein and are a little bit lower in calorie. So the fruit juice is called naked juice that I'm referring to. It has like 30 grams of protein. We don't recommend juices quite as much because they've had the fiber stripped from them, and we want you to, make sure you're getting in your fiber. So smoothies are a better choice, but you can just grab a naked juice from the store. And the protein in it does help your blood sugar from spiking. Protein serving sizes, if you are keeping track of your intake, then it's pretty easy to notice how much protein might be in each of these items. So about the size of a deck of cards is going to be 3 ounces of meat. And again, that's about 20 to 25 grams of protein. 3 ounces of grilled or baked fish is going to look about the size of a checkbook. A fourth of a cup of almonds is around 23 almonds, and 2 teaspoons of peanut butter is about the size of a golf ball. Peanut butter is not super high in protein. I think it's one of those that also gets a little bit more credit than it deserves. But it does have some. It's more of a source of fat. So adequate protein intake, these are the barriers and the solutions that we see with a lot of our patients, either that are on active treatment or have just finished treatment and maybe are still experiencing some of these side effects. So low appetite is, can be caused by cancer itself or some of the side effects of treatment. And it can potentially result in inadequate calorie and protein intake, which can lead to muscle loss and fatigue. So for this, we just want to make sure we're including calorie-dense, protein-rich snacks and potentially including some nutrition supplements. Also, taste changes or metallic tastes can be common side effects of chemo or radiation therapy. Some food may taste bland or too salty, bitter, metallic, making protein-rich foods less appealing. So with this, a helpful tip is marinating your meats, particularly in like sweet marinades can help out a lot. Using plastic utensils or bamboo utensils instead of metal utensils, that can also be helpful too. Nausea and vomiting, for obvious reasons, makes it challenging to eat, especially heavier or rich protein sources. So you would want to try to opt for dry, bland, or cold protein foods that don't smell very strong, like maybe cottage cheese or yogurt, and then to eat slowly in a calm environment and just make sure that you're using your anti-nausea medication as prescribed. And then with mouth sores or difficulty swallowing, that can be challenging. So just choosing softer, moist protein sources, that could be like Greek yogurt, scrambled eggs, or smoothies and things like that can help. And then digestive issues like constipation and diarrhea. You can tailor the diet based on symptoms, and this is another concern that I recommend working with a dietitian. So you can eat high fiber protein foods like legumes for constipation, but you would want to eat more low residue or low fiber protein foods like eggs and fish for diarrhea, and just make sure that you stay real hydrated. So protein on the go, particularly if you're in active treatment or if you just have a lot of doctor's appointments, or if you're just a busy person, as most of us are, it's good to have those nice sources to just grab and go. So in that case, just having some protein bars in your bag or having a protein shake ready to roll, grabbing a low-fat Greek yogurt, string cheese, hard-boiled eggs, or even some hummus and vegetables. Hummus doesn't have a whole lot of protein, but it does have a little bit, and it also has some good healthy fat. So those are just some things that I recommend to grab and go for on the go individuals. So I am not a salesperson at all. These are just some of the brands that have a good amount of protein that I recommend. There's pure protein bars, Costco at Kirkland's, or I'm sorry, Kirkland protein bars at Costco have about 20 grams of protein, I think around 190 calories. And those are going to be a little bit cheaper. So for more bang for your buck, you can go to Costco and get some Kirkland bars. There's Quest bars or another option for protein bars. If you want a lower calorie bar with a lot of protein, the Built bars, I really like those on occasion. I think they have like 17 grams of protein and only 140 calories. And the David bars, I actually honestly have not tried yet, but they have only 150 calories and like 30 grams of protein. So if any of you end up trying those, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts. I can't weigh in on that. For plant-based protein, you can do Kind bars, IQ bars, Aloha. Kind bars have about 12 grams of protein. So these have a little bit less, but they still have a good amount. I like the RX bars too because they're a good snack with simple ingredients. Like they have like egg whites, peanuts, and dates as ingredients in one of their bars. And it's about 10 grams of protein, so it's good for a snack. Protein powder tips. I don't have a specific brand that I go to all the time. Right now, I'm on an Orgain kick, and so that's what I'm using. I do recommend 100% whey protein just because it does have the essential amino acids in it, highly bioavailable, and so your body can absorb it very well. For plant-based protein, I would recommend a pea protein protein powder as opposed to soy protein because while soy foods are fine, so you can eat tofu, tempeh, drink soy milk, we don't recommend processed soy protein isolates or in the form of protein powder. Um, Protein supplement tips, if you look at the back of the container, aim for 20 to 30 grams of protein per scoop. Most of them are going to have that. You can adjust the intake based on individual needs and guidance from a dietitian. Something that I've been doing lately that I've actually been enjoying, and it may sound weird, but it's actually really good, is getting a bowl of Greek yogurt and mixing chocolate protein powder in it. And it ends up being like 35 grams of protein for some Greek yogurt with chocolate protein powder. And I even put some blueberries in it. Um, so that's something that I've been doing to get to up my protein intake. But there's also unflavored protein that you can add to soups or potatoes, even applesauce, it can mix well. And then there's every flavor under the sun, just depending on what your taste buds like. So, as I mentioned before, oral nutrition supplements are an option for both weight gain, and then there's also some higher protein options on the next slide that are going to be more appropriate if you're trying to focus your efforts on weight maintenance or weight loss. So, these types of options you're going to want to have at least 350 calories, and most of these have around 20 to 30 grams of protein. Ensure Complete is going to have 30 grams of protein and 350 calories. There's something called Boost Very High Calorie that has 530 calories per container, and then also a lot of protein. For if you're on a budget, there's something called Equate Plus that you can get at Walmart that a lot of our patients use. And that if you're working with a dietitian within the Northside Hospital Cancer Institute, we do have coupons for Ensure, Boost, and Orgain. So if you see something that has plus, so your Equate Plus and your Ensure Plus, that just means they're likely going to have high calorie and high protein. So they are all lactose free because we do get that question a good bit. Sometimes they can be a little bit hard to digest, and so if that's the case, we recommend that maybe the patient has half of the container early in the morning, and then have breakfast, and then maybe mid morning have the other half. We have patients that are on drinking 2 to 4 a day, just kind of depending on what their needs are. And for those of you who are working on weight management, Ensure Max Protein is going to have about 150 calories and 30 grams of protein. Premier Protein has a variety of flavors. And so if you're looking to branch out in reference to flavors, Premier Protein is a good option. They also have that at Costco. Muscle Milk Light. For those of you working on blood glucose management, Glucerna does have a Protein Smart, as well as Boost Max Protein, Ensure Clear. If you're trying to get in protein, but you're only able to tolerate clears, Ensure Clear and Boost Breeze are going to be good options. They are a little bit lower in protein, but they do have some protein. And then plant-based oral nutrition supplement options that we recommend quite frequently are Kate Farms, Orgain. Ensure does have a plant-based option now. And then also, plant-based protein powder can be mixed into a smoothie. So again, we like smoothies because it helps maintain the fiber content, which is good for many reasons. These are just some tips, and you can make it your own based on your taste. I do recommend that you switch up what you throw in your smoothie because we know that antioxidants and phytonutrients vary based on color. And so you don't want to always be eating, green fruits or red fruits, green vegetables. You want to make sure to vary the colors that you get in. Um, Using frozen vegetables and fruit will provide that coldness to a smoothie without needing ice cubes. That's what I typically do is just throw in some frozen berries, and that substitutes for ice, and it can make it thicker and heartier. Using a banana, yogurt, avocado, or tofu can add creaminess if you're a person that likes a creamier texture. And then Greek yogurt is going to bump up the protein content as well as tofu. And so that's kind of it kills two birds with one stone there. And then, of course, adding some protein powder in. You can also throw in some different spices that have phytonutrients for anti-inflammatory compounds like cinnamon, ginger, turmeric. And then you really want to let your fruit be the source of sweetness. And so you don't recommend adding any sugar to it, and it really shouldn't need it. And this is a great way. This is what I do at my house because sometimes I have difficulty getting my husband and my daughter to eat enough vegetables. So I make a smoothie and I throw in some spinach and other types of greens and cucumbers, and the fruit overpowers the taste of the vegetables. And so I admit that I sneak them in sometimes, but it's a good way to do that. So here's an example recipe, and you can tailor it to if you're trying to potentially put on weight or if you're trying to focus on weight management. Um, for additional calories, you can throw in your walnuts. You see chia seeds here. You can do a Boost Plus or even a Boost Very High Calorie, and you'll see that uh, energy content is going to be higher. I'd recommend throwing maybe some Greek yogurt in there to get the protein content up a little bit more. Or with weight management, as you see on the right, throwing in some berries, a little bit of flaxseed, tofu, and then maybe almond milk. Almond milk is going to be low in calories, but it's also going to give you some calcium. And then the tofu is going to provide some good protein. So really, we just want to make sure that we're balancing our plate, and the New American Plate from American Institute of Cancer Research recommends that about 1/3 or less of your plate be that animal protein source and the rest plants. But you'll see on this plate, it looks like this individual added some quinoa. And so not only is that 1/3 of the plate chicken provided protein, but this person has also incorporated some plant protein as well to get in. Same thing here if you need a different type of visual, utilizing the plate method. So drawing an indivisible line down your plate, and about 1/4 of the plate is going to be that good lean protein source. 1/4 a grain, a starch or a starchy vegetable like potatoes, sweet potatoes. And then half of the plate filled with colors. So your non-starchy vegetables want to make sure you're eating the rainbow and eating a variety of colors. And then you'll see that fruit is also the source of sweetness. And so this is how you would incorporate into a protein into a balanced diet, just making sure you include a little bit of each macronutrient, making sure that you're eating a variety of vitamins and minerals. So what to do? Again, we want to strive for all meals and snacks to have all three macronutrients. So your carbohydrates, your protein, and your fat. Work with the dietitian to see how much protein you need. It's going to average out, aim for about 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. If you're eating 3 meals a day, you may need less, you may need more. Maybe if you're consuming 1 to 2 snacks a day, you can have a kind bar for 10 grams or, whatever you want to do, but just make sure that it has about 10 to 15 grams of protein. Total fat, typically 50 to 60 grams of protein a day for those of you who are tracking, limiting your saturated fat, avoiding trans fat. You never want your carbohydrates to be naked. And so again, that just goes back to that balancing act of making sure that you're consuming protein and fat with your carbohydrates. So here's a sample menu, and you'll just note for breakfast that Greek yogurt is the choice of protein here. This person apparently is having a meatless Monday and having some black bean chili as their protein source here. And then a fillet of salmon for dinner. And you'll see that there are carbohydrate sources as well as fruits and vegetables and healthy fats. with each meal. And then some good snack ideas of incorporating protein. Small apple with peanut butter, raw veggies and salad dressing really shouldn't be on here because it does not have much protein at all. But nuts and fruit is a good option. A rice cake with creamy peanut butter, maybe some fruit on top. Nuts and cheese is good. Greek yogurt with fruit or beet chips is the example that's given here. Cottage cheese with fruit is another good snack. Or you can boil up a bunch of hard-boiled eggs in the morning and have that with some fruit for a snack, maybe a mid-morning snack. And then string cheese is another good, again, grab and go type of snack idea.
Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. If you're interested in other live or recorded programs, please visit the online program tab of our website, cscatlanta.org, or follow us on Facebook. We'll be sharing additional information on upcoming programs.